Hello, I'm Rose McGee, and I'm founder of Sweet Potato Comfort Pie. Amelius, thank you again for such a wonderful introduction and great overview of this program, this series, this very special series, recognizing the contributions to the Minnesota community of Elder Katie Sample. The Katie Sample series. This is our second episode of 3, and each time it just gets better and better. The first time, which was just a few weeks ago, Katie was able to talk about the past a little bit with, my goodness, icons Dr. Josie Johnson and Elder Mahmoud El Khati. You can't get any more iconic in Minnesota than that. So the 3 of them together were wonderful. Those videos are now available if you go to the University of Minnesota's website. You can find them, and we'll put that link in the chat. But tonight, I tell you, hold on to your seats. Get your pencils, your pads, so you can take notes, because we've got some energy in the room again. So first of all, I want Elder Katie Sample just to come in her own way, as we would say in Black church, and do an introduction of the program, where we've been, where we're going, and who we have tonight. Katie.
Thank you, thank you. I just want you all to know that this is a very special time for me to have these wonderful, outstanding Black women educators come back to us. They've been here in the past with us from our celebrating successes for educating African American children. So this is a revisiting of the wonderful work that they've done and how they left behind directions and help for us to actually use their material and to help it to work, help it to come alive for us and make a big difference in our lives. So when I hear of their names and I read their material, it just brings a lot of great feelings of great memories and great feelings of satisfaction and joy and hope. So Dr. Yvette Jackson and Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings have been here before with us, and I am so happy to welcome you back. We have a lot in common. As I read your work, I just get excited because I say, oh, that's what I've been trying to say or trying to do, and it's in my heart. And Yvette is a student of Asa Hilliard, who I very much admire. She knows him knew him personally. I knew him mainly from his research and studied his philosophy that I try to incorporate in our program in the African American Academy. And then he was our very first speaker for our conference. So we have that connection that just makes us even greater. And I use some of Gloria Ladson-Billings' work as I try to do some cultural competency training in our school, and it was very effective. I had the teachers to read the book, and then we came back and we talked about how we implemented it within their classroom, and it had a lot of meaning for us. So I have a very special connection to these wonderful educators, and I'm looking forward to how they're going to help us understand where we need to go from here. We've looked at the past and recognized that we had a lot to learn. We've had resources to teach us. Now we need to put it into practice because things have not improved to the extent that they should have by now. So we've got to go back, take a look, understand, and take some action and look at it as necessity, urgency, and taking action. We're not going to sit back now and watch our children die and fall into the pit. We're going to take some action and make a difference. And these wonderful educators are going to help us to know how we can do that.
That's wonderful. So what we'll do is jump right into that, and we'll just go right down here to Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, because we have seen you here in Minnesota so many times. So just share with us, based upon everything that Katie has referenced, where are we now?
Well, thank you so much. I am so honored to join you. Just sending you greetings from what I guess I might call Southern Minnesota. There are so many similarities between Wisconsin and Minnesota. If you've ever spent any time in Scandinavia, you'll understand the whole thing. The places are so similar, topography and people, and even the notion of sort of social welfare. Uh, but I want to talk a little bit about the moment that we are in. I know you said talk about the present, but I really want to hone in on exactly where we are. And I've been going everywhere saying that we are in the midst of 4 pandemics. 4. The novel coronavirus that has us in this virtual space right now that we all know about. But we are also in a pandemic of anti-Black racism. It's a pandemic. It's everywhere. George Floyd was a flashpoint, but it was one incident in the midst of this happening over and over again. We had Ahmaud Arbery. We were followed by Breonna Taylor. After George Floyd here in Wisconsin, in Kenosha, we had the shooting of Jacob Blake 7 times in the back. So that's the second pandemic. The third pandemic is a pandemic that deals with the coming economic downturn. We keep pretending like, oh, everything's going to be okay. Well, I can tell you that given the fact that there's been so much job loss and that there are people who are waiting with bated breath to get that notice from their landlords or their mortgage companies, that downward trend is hovering over the heads of our children. Are they going to be able to do post-secondary education even if they got the grades? Because the economic situation is so dire. But the fourth pandemic is the coming climate catastrophe. We keep pretending like, oh yeah, they talking about global warming. No, it's much bigger than that. My own grandchildren all live in California and literally cannot go outside because of the condition of the air. For those of us who have friends and loved ones who are in that Gulf Coast region, they know they have seen more storms, more frequent storms, more intense storms. Literally, we have gone through the entire alphabet of storms this season, and we are now in the Greek alphabet on storm beta. So those 4 things are all happening at the same time, and our young people are having to cope with that. Now that sounds like a tale of doom and gloom, but I can tell you that there's still hope. There is still hope. And for that hope, I've been looking at the work of an Indian essayist by the name of Arundhati Roy. And she says, the pandemic is a portal. It's a door between the old world and the new, and that this pandemic is no different from any other pandemic. And that what we could choose to do is go into that new world, dragging all this crazy stuff behind with us. We could be dragging our greed and our avarice and our racism and our big data banks and our smoky skies and our polluted rivers. Or we can choose to go into this new world lightly with little luggage, to come into a new world it's exciting with energy and to fight for this new world. And so I'm going to choose that second option. And so one of the things that I've been calling for everywhere that I've had a chance to speak during this is what I've called a hard reset. And what I mean by that is each and every one of us has one of these things in our, we got them in our pockets, in our purses, on our desktops. Everybody's got a mobile device. And at some point, it's not going to work. You know, whatever you do, something goes wrong with these things. And you might turn it off and turn it back on again. You might remove the SIM card and put it back in again. You might take the battery out and put that back in again. You may go online and see if you can find a support group to tell you what to do. And eventually you may find your way back to the mobile phone store, whether you go back to the Apple store or the Samsung store or the LGs or whatever device you have. And somebody who's probably about 17 years old wearing a t-shirt is going to tell you, you know, I think it's time for a hard reset. Now, what that means is if you haven't backed up that device, you're about to lose all of your pictures, all of your contacts, wherever you were in the Candy Crush game, all that's going to go. And what they're going to do is give you back a device that looks a lot like it looked when it came from the factory. And you're going to start all over. I've been saying everywhere I can think of that we need a hard reset in education. And our children, Black children, can be the leaders of that hard reset because they give us this opportunity to think about education anew and in new ways.
Thank you for that, a hard reset. And as we think about that and all of the work that you do, Dr. Jackson, how does that tie in to what we just heard from Dr. Ladson-Billings? That was incredible, by the way. I did take some notes because I want to find, what is it, Arundhati Roy?
Arundhati Roy.
Arundhati. Spell her name, please.
A-R-U-N.
A-R-U-N.
D-H-A-T-I.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And it's R-O-W, just like it sounds, Roy.
Okay.
The last name.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Yvette.
Yes.
You're doing some incredible work out there too. When we think of mindfulness, I think of getting all Zen oriented and thinking, but you've taken it to another level.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I'm so glad Gloria went before me because first of all, and I just have to say this publicly, how much I admire and have been inspired, but so that I can work off of what Gloria said is so helpful here. So let's talk about where we are in the idea of mindfulness. You know, mindfulness is this idea really of being in relationship with yourself, so you know yourself better, so you can do more to transcend, meaning using your own strengths, and be more self-actualized, so you can also help others. That's basically it, is how do we be in better relationship with ourselves so we can be, as Asa Hilliard really would have said, so we can be more woke. How can we be more awake to what's important in our lives and how we are communicating what that is. Now, that's generally what mindfulness is. But why is that so important? Because mindfulness is about taking the time to breathe, to take in, to focus your mind so you can pay intentional attention without any kind of qualms about where you are and what you're doing. Now, again, why that is so important, because in this pandemic, and as Gloria said, there are 4 of them, we are dealing with amazing, amazing stress, and not post-traumatic stress disorder. It is just ongoing trauma that is happening right now. But you see, we have known things for a long time that we have failed to use about educating our children. And that is the whole idea that I'd like to talk about, gifted education. In other words, what we usually do for students when they are labeled as gifted, to inspire them, to push them to the frontier of their intelligence, to engage them, is exactly what we need to be doing right now, because children are in trauma. What we have found out, when students are engaged in what they're doing, when they are feeling inspired, it mitigates for the negative impact that the trauma is having on our students in terms of the physiological and the biological, the neurological. So what do I mean by that? We know that when people are in stress, their bodies let off cortisol. And cortisol breaks down your thinking, you're on your feet thinking, your creativity, your memory, everything our students need to learn. And so we know that by mindfulness, this is where you're taking the exercises to help students just breathe in, take breaths, to relax, so they can come out on the other side more focused. But getting back to gifted education, as I was just saying, when you engage students, when you start with them with their strengths, with their interests, what you're doing is letting off endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. These are neurotransmitters that, again, can help mitigate against that stress that they are dealing with. This is vital. And so it's so important, because I know your last show, you were talking about the past. Why are we still dealing with our students by starting with what is labeled as where they're not doing well, where they're underachieving? We have been doing that for decades. And where has that gotten us? And yet when students are labeled a certain way, we know that it is more beneficial, it is more helpful to start with their strengths as a way of engaging. What we know at this time now, though, from neuroscience is the reason it makes sense to start with strengths is because of the way you can help students focus, because of the way you can engage them. So what I've been calling the work is, how do we gift our students with what we already know from what I like to call gifted land, which means the kinds of things that are going to really engage them to help them. So in this work of mindfulness, we usually talk about it in a meditative way. How do you breathe in? How do you get into meditation? Now that is really critical, because as I said, even if you just can take 1 minute breathing breaks, just 1 minute every hour, what you can do is to help do that reset, actually, like Gloria was talking about. Now, this is so critical right now, because in the Zoom world we're living, we are really getting Zoom overloaded, which means that students are, the idea of engaging, how do you engage by doing a lot of worksheets? That is not engaging. So I'll give you another side of this. So I work with a lot of teachers, and one of the things that they will say to me is, but we have this thing called Zoom. How am I supposed to be engaging students? And I'm saying to them, wait a minute, that should have been what we've been talking about forever. It should always be about how do we engage them so that they are feeling this idea of having value, of feeling that they can affiliate in the community of a classroom, because they are making the connections by the kinds of things that are, as I said, interest, or is going to push them to be more interested in what they're doing. So when we talk about mindfulness, there are two sides of this. One is looking at it from the social, emotional, the idea of really helping to get focused. But the other side is, how are we as educators being more mindful about what we're doing in the classroom, so we can not only help students focus, but so that we can push them to this idea of being at much higher levels of learning. So that's why I keep talking about gifting. And it gets to this, and I'll end here talking about equity consciousness. Because again, if you're going to be mindful, that means you have to be equity conscious. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, conscious means being awake. It means being aware. But the equity part is, what are you doing so that all of our students can thrive and flourish, so that their innate potential can be brought forward? That's what we have to be, one, conscious of, is innate potential of all students. All students are able to have high intellectual performances. They're motivated. They want to be engaged. we have to be giving them the kinds of pedagogy that engages them. So there are 7 practices, and Gloria, I will again talk about, if you think about Gloria's talking about culturally responsive teaching, what are the kinds of things that validate students? What helps them in more comprehensive ways? What helps them emancipate themselves so they really recognize their strength? So there are 7. The first one, and this is so pivotal right now in terms of being mindful as teachers and in this pandemic, the first one is starting by identifying students' strengths and their interest and activating them. What do I mean? This is the beginning of the school year, and instead of starting the school year by saying, let's see where the students are not doing well, let's focus on those areas, which again, not only isn't getting us far, but when teachers feel that they have to constantly be identifying and focusing on deficits, they lose their potency. They are not engaged. They're feeling that they don't have the strength to take students to the next step. But when you start by identifying strengths, that really amps up the consciousness, the belief, and the confidence of students to really move forward. So I would like to just say that when we think of mindfulness, think of equity consciousness, think of gifting ourselves by believing in our strengths and starting with the strengths of students.
Amazing, absolutely
All right.
amazing.
Thank
There's
you.
so much that
Amazing.
we're learning here, and we just don't have enough time. This is
Yeah.
why you do these things over a course of several day workshops. And
Right.
one of the things I got to ask you though, Dr. Yvette, because we're zoomed out, right?
Right.
So can you give us just a little quick example of how we can breathe? What's a little 30-second exercise that we can do right now?
Exactly. Okay, sure. The first thing is, to get into a comfortable position, but really have your spine straight. So we say to students, you want to relax, but you want to have your whole body showing. And then they understand this idea. And really put your chin down a little bit, because that helps your spine be the most direct. And then what we want to do is we want to just have our hands in a pretty comfortable place on our thighs. If you're feeling comfortable, you're either closing your eyes or you're just looking down halfway. And what you want to do is pay attention to your breathing. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take you through 3 deep breaths. And even that in a minute, and going back and forth, I'll show you in a minute, really helps to reset. So let's just sit, close your eyes. I'm going to do the count for the inhale and for the exhale, and we'll do it just this time for 4 counts in and 4 counts out. Okay, and then I'm going to ask you at the end of the exhale just to hold it for another extra second, and then we'll go back through it again. Okay, so if you will just get comfortable, have your spine straight, your neck, your chin a little bit down to straighten it out, close your eyes, and I'm going to start the breathing. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, hold. Now just go back to your natural breathing and let your eyes kind of flutter open slowly, because you're going to get the onslaught of the light coming in. So this idea of just taking that pause, and like I said, it may seem like a lot, but if you just took a minute every hour, or every half an hour is really better, every half an hour is better, especially in a Zoom situation. You reset, and what you're helping is for the students to focus yet again more deeply, and it also makes us all more relaxed.
Thank you for that, because
Thank you.
that's necessary
great.
for all of us. Yes.
Yes.
For our audience that's out there tonight, and I hope you did participate in this exercise. Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Yvette. Oh my goodness.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much.
Well, Katie, we're out of time, but if there's anything, Katie, you would like to say in response to what these wonderful scholars have said, go right ahead.
I just want to thank you so much, and I hope the audience recognize the value of having people like this in your presence and as a part of your training and understanding of how we can do a better job. And I believe deep in my heart that something is going to bring them back to us in another way at another time to continue on this understanding of mindfulness, building on the strengths of our children, and how we need to have a hard reset.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will leave with gifted land, the idea of gifted land, and certainly going into a new world. That's pretty powerful. And we have a choice of going or staying stuck behind or being left behind. Ladies, I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Pleasure is certainly mine.
Yes, likewise.
I don't know if there's, I know we're out of time, but if there's one thing you'd like to say to Katie, go right ahead and do it anyhow.
Katie, just keep being you.
Right.
Thank you.
That's right. And you just remember that that idea of how you inspire really unlocks minds. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you, ladies.
Thanks,
You're
Rose.
welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.